All right, everybody, we're back. This week, what I want to focus on is I want to take a step backwards a little bit. One of the things I often talk about is the concept that moving forward, real success is probably going to come from being a multi-doctor practice in a single location. And that also means that my generation or even younger generation, at some point in your career, you will probably hire a young dentist a few years out of school. And so this week I've got Dr. Haley Schultz on from Michigan, who is a 2024 dental school graduate, has an amazing podcast called The Dental Download, and her focus is helping dental students and helping people in their first 5 years of their career. Haley, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting. And um, you know, part of it is it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Like as my generation, we want to like I want to complain about my teenagers, like how are they going to make it? My parents complained about me, like how am I going to make it? And look at us now. We just, as human beings, we find a way, but it doesn't go without its challenges and all of those things. And so honestly, what I would like today is just have a good open conversation so my listeners can understand what your generation, what's in their head, what they're thinking, what challenges, because when we understand that, we can work together better. And then hopefully, that can give them insight into what's going on. So sound fair?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So what are young dentists most anxious about right now? Like what's in their head right now? Like what's going through their mind?
I'd have to say it's the student loan that's repaying the dental school. There's very few dental schools that are reasonable amount of debt these days. I went to Michigan and I felt it's one of the lower cost schools because I live in state, so that helps. I'm less than half some of the people in the country that went to private schools, but that's a big factor is they want to feel like they graduate and like day one they're going to be making like big dentist money, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, I think. But they are just really worried about income and stability are things that give them a lot of stress that I hear from all of my colleagues.
So what is the typical loan? So you must hear from your audience a lot about this, correct? So is it
Yes.
is it fair to say you have good insight into what they're feeling about this or what the realities are?
Yes. So I have seen, I think like the statistical average is right around 300,000. And I think that's accounting for the public and the privates kind of average together. And then the private schools can be 500,000 or even more if people still have undergrad loans or if they went through any kind of specialty training.
Yeah, and so what does that look like on a monthly basis? Let's just assume let's call it 250, $300,000. What does that look like? What kind of noose is around the dentist's neck at that point in time each month?
Yeah, there's this is a tricky question because there's all the different repayment strategies, right? But I would be saying they're looking at least $3,000 a month, maybe four, like a nice mortgage. So
Okay.
it's a lot for people to think about when, again, you're coming out of school. Most people didn't have a job during dental school. They weren't making any money. Maybe they had $3,000 to their name, and then now they know they have this monthly loan payment, and it freaks them out a little bit.
And so just to again, my goal in this is to be kind of I don't want to say the anti you because that's not at all what I want to be. I want to try to put it into perspective for my generation that's hiring most of you guys, right? Is so let's just call it $4,000 a month. Okay, so that's $4,000 a month post taxes. So that means to pay the loans, that dentist probably needs the first $75,000 of their salary on average is going to pay just their student debt. And I think I didn't realize this until probably 2016 or 17. I had one of my dentists that I hired, and he was complaining to me and I was being tough, and then I said, well, tell me more. And he's like, well, my monthly payments of this. I'm like, you got to be joking me. And so then I like to do math, so I did math, and the math was like, my God, half your pay, half your base pay goes to pay your student loans. And that being said, I would still go into dentistry. It's still such an amazing profession with such income potential that it's to me it's worth 300. Like if somebody said to me at this point in my career, like say for my kids, they said, "Hey, would you take a $300,000 loan to have a job that would pay you $300 to $500,000?" The answer would be absolutely yes. And to me, that's the problem ultimately we need to solve for. All right. So okay. So let's say this. Now I'm going to bring up another thing I see young dentists dealing with and older dentists too is so now you guys are burdened with student debt. But now we're also burdened with fake media, social media, and Facebook and Insta famous. Uh, and that leads all of us to start comparing ourselves. My generation, your generation. Tell us more about how you guys are dealing with, because you grew up in a complete social media era.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of toxicity on a lot of forums and different Facebook groups and things. It's especially people loving the anonymous posting feature. They can say whatever they want and there's no one that can fact check it. So people get stressed out and there's very different sorry,
That's
I'll
okay.
sneeze there. There's very different practice environments, town to town, city to city, all across the country. So I share like my real numbers at my practice, how I've grown in a year and a half, everything like that. And I have friends working in Medicaid practices and city environments because that's the only job they can find. And they work double the hours, do double the amount of procedures to earn the same thing as me. So they're getting more experience, but maybe they're getting more physically taxed. Maybe they're a little more burnt out. So people are striving to reach like the same goal with having very different situations coming in. So I think people try to find something that they like online or a number that they heard of how much they should produce per day or how many new patients they should see, which are good benchmarks, but they try to make it a one size fits all benchmark when they really need to be looking at their unique situation and setting their own personal goals for what they want for their own life.
Yeah, I call that you're not asking the right questions. Like if somebody says, "How much should I be making?" I'm like, "Well, tell me what your debt load is." And if you say, "Hey, my friend is making this," well, tell me what kind of practice are they in? What kind of fee schedule are they working with? What kind of procedure mix are they doing? Because it's not an apple. It's almost always not an apples to apples comparison when you compare what some and then there's the lying factor, right? Or the fibbing factor or the exaggeration factor that kind of goes with that. Yeah. So, what do you tell people that, or how do you handle this yourself? Because I'm sure you've kind of compared yourself to others on social media too. Like, what advice do you give and how do you handle it yourself?
I find myself mostly comparing myself because you mentioned at the beginning that like group practice model is what's kind of growing in the future. I'm at a single location office with 4 doctors, and they're all 5 to 15 years out of school and what I would consider to be extremely successful. So I find myself saying, man, like when am I going to have a month like Dr. X? Like, oh, they're 5 or 6 years out of school, but I don't want to say jealous, but you get overly eager for something that I haven't yet earned and worked up to. But I'm like, I'm in the same office. I see the same patients. I could plan the same treatment and do it. So why isn't it happening yet? And I think we get impatient. And it's something that our generation, myself, needs to be self aware of and remind ourselves that we need to put in the work and put in the time and push ourselves and grow our confidence and grow our communication skills so we can have those bigger cases, execute them well. And I think that's something that a lot of us just almost seems like some people kind of want things just the easy way and kind of handed to them a lot of times.
Well, I love what you're saying in the sense that, excuse me for 1 second. Hi, buddy. I told you not to come in. Sorry about that. Um, I love what you're saying because it's the right answer. It's the truthful answer, right? The only caveat I would give to you and dentists that are hiring your age dentists is what took me 10 years. Like we will often you'll hear the owner dentist say, "Well, I didn't get that until this year." or until this number of years in, so you have to wait that long. And that's so far from the truth. In a modern world where information is readily available, where education is readily available, we can accelerate or compress our timeline. And what took me 20 years of success could take somebody 5 years of success. Can you get 20 years in 1 year? The answer is sure. Unicorns exist. But the likelihood of recreating 20 years of success in 1 year, that's an absolute outlier. 20 years and 5 years, I think it's absolutely doable, but it takes hard work, diligence, commitment, sacrifice, all of these things to achieve that. And one of the things I focus on when I'm mentoring my younger dentists or when I have them in the practice is, hey, let's talk about a game plan. Let's give you a path of what that looks like. Let's talk about how realistic that is, what work we have to put in, what sacrifice we may have to make, and let's be honest if we're ready and willing to make that. And also, let's be honest if I can create an environment to allow that to happen. And sometimes the owner dentist isn't willing to create that environment sometimes to make that happen. All right, let me ask you this. What are the most common questions that you get DM'd to you or that you hear younger dentists asking you?
Lately, it's a lot about contracts. If they're going to look at a job for an associateship, saying, is this normal? Is this normal? What do I want to see for this region of the country? So, like, should I pay lab fees? Should I not? Should I do this higher percent of collections or a lower percent of production? Just all the nitty gritty of things that eventually I always say, my opinion, this is what I've heard. Please get your final contract reviewed by an attorney because they're going to know more than me. But it's a lot of what even is a good offer on our end from an owner doctor for a place we might work.
What is just to hear it direct, like what is a good offer these days? Like what are the expectations of, like what were your expectations, or looking back even, let's not even worry about what you said a year and a half ago. Like you're now more experienced and you have more knowledge and wisdom. If you were to go back a year and a half or 2 years, what would you tell yourself in terms of expectations from a compensation perspective?
Yeah, it seems that fresh out of school, if it's a more busy competitive area where you're lucky to find a job, you can get an offer like a 650 daily minimum, but if
Hmm.
you're in a more rural area or something like that, you could get up to 900. I think 750 seems to be like the nice average for a fresh new grad that's reasonable for someone to sign a contract. But then a more seasoned dentist that's at least got a year under their belt or maybe a residency, they could be looking for that $1,000 a day daily guarantee. And typically people want to see at least 3 months of that. I've had people tell me that they won't sign a contract if it's not at least 6 months or even a full year of a guarantee, which seems a little bit heavy for me, but I can see both perspectives, that like from the owner doctor and the associate side. The associate wants the stability, but the owner wants to know that you have a drive to bring in these cases and complete work to be profitable for their practice too. So I can see both perspectives, but that's kind of the daily rates that I'm seeing people look at. And then the percentages I think are so office to office specific. It really depends what kind of labs they're using, what their fee schedule is, so many things to see if your percent makes sense. And I think you have to ask for some samples from the practice to figure that out.
But let me ask this question then, because you're being a politician and skirting around the the question. That's okay though. Um, is it normal? Is it like, to me, 30% is the benchmark? Is that the typical going percentage? 30% with no lab fee is the typical the typical benchmark that we're coaching our customers, our clients to. That's what you should expect to pay people from a compensation perspective.
Of collections?
Of collections, yeah, or adjusted production slash collections. To me, they should be the same.
Yeah, I think that is good. If someone told me
Hmm.
that, I would say that's pretty good. I have classmates and myself
Hmm.
that's higher. I'm 35%. So, and no lab fees. But I'm in a rural area. So
Right.
again, it's that nitty gritty. But I would say you're aiming for 30. If you can get a couple more percents, that's great. I personally am not a fan of the kind of tiered production where
Hmm.
once you produce this, then you get 31 and then you get 32. I just think it's confusing for you to run your reports and know if you're being compensated fairly. So I would try to negotiate with your employer for just one set percent and let that be.
Do you hear a lot about people being gypped by their owner dentist or not getting paid or things like that? Because I see sometimes on Insta Famous and Facebook that people will post that, and I wonder, is that legitimate? Because like, how does somebody hire somebody else if I have a reputation for not paying people? Is that a legitimate fear or issue out there?
I've only seen it from forum posts as well, or
Okay.
maybe there's a name to it, maybe there's not any real people. And it seems to always be affiliated with the DSOs or like very large groups that are nearly a mini DSO. So I haven't seen that much with private offices.
All right. So you bring up the group dentistry, DSOs, corporate dentistry, private equity, evil, good, whatever we want to call it. Like, what are dental students or young dentists take on DSOs? Do they look at it as a great thing? Do they look at it as a necessary evil? Do they look at it as just evil? I mean, which kind of what is their take on that?
I think the tone is it's okay for a little bit if that's all that you can get for when it comes to like the major corporate ones that are sponsoring all these events for the dental students, trying to get them to work there, taking them on these trips and like they literally take us like to fancy dinners in dental school and pay for these big parties at like local clubs. Like they do all this stuff, they throw all this money to try to get us to work there. So you have to think, okay, well, why are they doing that? But it seems to be that most people are working for them if they are an internationally trained dentist. There's usually a few for each program, and they're not able to find private offices willing to do the visa sponsorships, or they are someone that has a partner or something where they need to live in a very specific location for a year or two, and then they're going to go somewhere else. So they just think this is kind of a interim job. They have locations everywhere. I'll do this for a little bit. I haven't really met anyone that is like, I love this so much. This is my forever thing. I want to work my way up in this corporate group. And yeah, it seems that people prefer private or again, smaller groups. Like maybe they have 5, 10 offices in a metro area.
Okay. So it's interesting you say that because I can't get a firm answer on the statistics on this, but what I've read ranges anywhere from a third to two-thirds of dental students graduated join a group DSO practice as their first job out of school. Uh, so I would consider that a necessary evil from your description. I'm not saying that's my words, not your words. That you're looking at it as a short-term gig. Almost think of it like a residency or on-the-job training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's how people see it. And they're like, well, they have X amount of free CE included and they have their own
Mm.
this and that. And I'm just going to do it, make some dentist money instead of going to residency and then try to find another job, especially in like Chicago, Denver. It's really hard for my colleagues to find a job right out of school with zero experience that didn't choose to do a residency. So they kind of need something under their belt and then they're going to look for a better job.
Yeah, it's interesting. My best associates, my best partners in my practice, and I don't refer to them as associates. I refer to them as partners in my practice, um, have been what I call failed at a DSO. Okay, in other words, they went to a group practice, they got their experience, they got their speed, they determined what they didn't like about that group, and they were honestly turned out to be an amazing fit in our practice. What I have found is that when I've hired young dentists straight out of school, the grass is greener on the other side, and so they hear how busy they are, or how these things are at a group office, and then it makes our private offices sometimes feel not as appealing. So I've stayed away from new, to your point, I've stayed away from new grads without experience just simply because they're too attracted to what I consider the grass is greener, sometimes truth, sometimes not truth of what group practices are.
Yeah, very fair.
The other thing that you brought up was CE. What is your take on CE sponsored by the groups themselves?
Again, the DSOs, obviously, I haven't worked for one, so I don't know how quality it could be. I can't imagine it's all that groundbreaking. I think
Hmm.
I have to imagine the ones that you're picking out yourself are recommended by well experienced people in implants, for example. Like I went to Implant Pathway and that was highly recommended. I think I have to imagine those are a little bit better. I went to one through an implant company that was all DSOs and they offered me because we bought a lot of implants and they needed to fill a spot. And it was like a DSO course. And it was like 10% as good as the full one that I went through implant pathway, for example. So it makes me a little skeptical because they're like, and now you guys can go out and place implants. And I'm like, they were here for like 8 hours and they did like one pig jaw implant, no patience. And I don't know, it's okay. But it makes me a little skeptical. And then in terms of like CE coming from a private office, I also contract wise do see a lot of people getting some kind of CE stipend in their contract as part of enticing them or other professional reimbursements. I try to encourage my friends, if you're going to negotiate for that, have a specific course or continuum that you want to do. So if you want to do a specific endo course, have that picked out, have your reasons why, show it to the owner doctor and say, this is what I want to do. This is why I think it's going to bring value to the practice. So therefore I want this amount of money this year. I think you can't just ask for a random number under the sun because it sounds like a lot of money, because I have friends that had only like 1 or 2,000 or something per year of a stipend, but they never even used it because they didn't even know what they wanted in the first place. So they asked for this money and then it just got unused.
Well, one of the things that I did some research on your podcast, and you talk about life audits, or
Mm-hmm.
I noticed something along those lines in several episodes. Can you like that to me as a English as second language growing up in an Indian household, the word balance didn't exist. You know, I grew up in a motel. We owned the motel. We lived in the motel. We worked 24 hours a day. The word balance and life audit, like my parents would probably slap me if I asked them, I'm doing a life audit. Now at this age, they'd probably be like, that's a great idea. But tell me more about that. What that means, and kind of what that's done for you.
Yeah, at the time of recording that specific episode, it was a way to have a framework to describe looking at your life, seeing areas where you're fulfilled, areas where you're working towards what you say you want, and areas where your life is not on track. So, looking at each category of your life, your family, your friends, your free time, hobbies, what if you have that, how is it spent? Your work, anything else that's important to you, and kind of ranking them and breaking them down into, is this supporting my long-term vision for my life? Am I being my best self every day? I'm kind of like they say in Atomic Habits, for example, like, do I wake up and do the things that the person that I say I am or the person that I want to be would do throughout all these areas of your life? And almost all of us are going to have somewhere that we slack off or that we don't push ourselves. So it's really assessing how on track are you to what you want in life, but it has to start with figuring out what you want in life. And I think for younger people, it's still something that a lot of people are navigating, of what they really want their rest of their life to look like and what direction they'd like to head.
Where do we find more associates like you? I mean, you seem to have a balanced head on your shoulder, have somewhat of a realistic view, and you could be lying, you could be faking it. I don't know. You come across as very genuine in this. Like that's not been my experience with most young dentists. Has been like, I want it fast, I want it now, I want to be doing this, I've earned it, I deserve it. And it gives all of us, all of you, all of us, our profession, it puts of all of us in a difficult situation. All right, so last question for you. Uh, let's talk about mindset here. What do young dentists fear the most, and what would you say they want to do clinically but feel unsafe or unready to do? Like what's holding them back from being their best self? Or because I firmly believe if money's what holds you back, gotta learn the skill set. But what holds them back from investing in that, or doing it, or launching and implementing?
I feel like we've talked about kind of the money burden enough, so I'll give
Hmm.
a different answer to
Yeah.
add to things. I would imagine it's a mix of confidence and needing to grow in communication skills. I think people come in with a dental school mindset where they present every single thing that could be done to fix the tooth. They give every single pro and con, and then they stop talking.
Mm.
And they just say, okay, so what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know half of the terms you just said. I came here, I'm paying you as the professional to tell me what to do. So I think that's a dental school mindset trap people get stuck in. People get a little overly ambitious and trying to save teeth and treatment planning a little bit too conservatively from dental school, I would say. So those are things that hold them back from being able to do the bigger procedures. And dental school really scares you for the most part. They don't even let you do like a quadrant of fillings. They're like one, maybe two in these 3 hours. Like, good luck. And it's just, they really tear you down, I would say. So people need real world advice and experience from podcasts like this and understanding that they have to grow beyond that. And that's just not how the real world works. So whether that's getting out and being in an office during dental school on your breaks or on the weekends, or finding an office where you're alongside someone that you said wants to create an environment that will foster your growth and push you in a way that's, not too aggressive, but allows you to grow. So people really need to be okay with going beyond almost everything they learned in dental school. And it's good clinical foundations, but there's a different way to go about it in the real world.
Haley, where should people follow you at?
Yeah, my pages are Dr. Haley DDS, and then the podcast is The Dental Download, and you can find both of them everywhere.
Perfect. And if you're a young dentist or if you're a owner dentist that will be hiring younger dentists, I think you owe it yourself to get to the Dental Download podcast, understand what advice Haley's giving, connect with her, and get into the head of the dentist that you're going to be hiring, because our success is directly related to how well we embrace that generation and how well we embrace and accelerate their future. Haley, any other parting words or any other words of wisdom you'd like to throw out to our audience?
I imagine if they are fellow dentists that are your age, more seasoned and experienced, just be honest with our generation. If you see areas we can improve and areas that we could benefit from your life experience, please share. And if people aren't susceptible, then again, they're not the right match for your practice, but you're probably still going to leave a lingering impression burned in their mind, and give them a couple years and it'll probably click and you're going to still help them and impact them. If you feel like you failed at something or disappointed that a certain mentorship match didn't work out, you're probably making a much bigger difference than you realize.
Well, Haley, thank you so much. And everybody, please follow Haley, get the podcast, and wish you so much success. You're well on your way to having an amazing career in dentistry.
Thank you.
I'm clicking stop, but it won't stop.
I'm telling you, technology, sometimes it gets you.
Hang tight, I'm going to click reload. I'm afraid to click reload. Are you still there?
I'm still here and it says it's still recording, so you should still be able to stop it
Okay.
if the button
Wow.
wants to work.